You know what's strange? We dissect baby boomers and their housing wealth like it's a case study. We critique millennials and their spending habits as if brunch were a moral issue. Gen Z and their gig economy experiments inspire entire columns. But sitting quietly in the middle is a generation managing money in one of the most psychologically layered ways imaginable. And almost no one talks about them. Generation X, born between 1965 and 1980. They're your coworker who quietly accumulated more wealth than younger colleagues realize, yet still behaves as if one missed paycheck could send everything crashing down. Your uncle who has $50,000 in savings but refuses to trade in his 15-year-old Toyota because it still runs fine. The friend who will spend $500 on concert tickets without hesitation, but clips coupons and compares grocery prices down to the cent. It looks inconsistent. It isn't. Their financial psychology was shaped by a specific historical rupture that rewired how they defined security. Imagine it's 1983. You're 10 years old. Your father takes you to the bank. He deposits a paycheck from the same company he's worked at for over a decade. The teller recognizes him. He has a pension waiting. His savings account earns meaningful interest. The mortgage is on track to be paid off early. Everything follows a clear narrative. Loyalty plus discipline equals stability. The system appears coherent. Now fast forward to 2008. You're 35. You followed that narrative. You contributed to your 401k. You bought a house. You believed in steady progress. Then the market collapses. Your retirement account loses a massive percentage of its value. Your home equity evaporates. People with 20 years at your company are escorted out with cardboard boxes. The formula wasn't broken. It was rewritten. And that psychological betrayal embedded itself permanently. Here's the first paradox about Generation X and money. They report some of the highest levels of anxiety about retirement, yet they maintain some of the most disciplined saving habits. Data from retirement research centers consistently shows they worry deeply about financial sufficiency, even while contributing steadily to long-term accounts. Psychologists refer to this mindset as defensive pessimism. You anticipate worst-case scenarios so thoroughly that you overprepare. It's not optimism, it's armor. And they have reasons. They watched defined benefit pensions disappear. They saw corporations pivot from loyalty to quarterly earnings. Many graduated into recessions in the early 1990s, only to face another collapse in 2008 during peak earning years. When instability repeats, it stops feeling like anomaly and starts feeling like pattern. Now consider the rise of the side hustle. Long before the term became trendy, Generation X was building secondary income streams. Federal Reserve data indicates relatively high rates of self-employment and supplementary income within this cohort. But unlike younger generations romanticizing entrepreneurship as escape, Gen X often keeps their primary job intact. They don't burn bridges. They build contingency plans. This behavior is less about ambition and more about memory. Picture being in your 20s during the 1990s, watching companies downsize entire departments. Loyal employees with decades of service are laid off with minimal warning. That image doesn't fade. It conditions you to distrust single points of failure. Multiple income sources become psychological insurance policies. Another intriguing contradiction. They change jobs pragmatically, but remain deeply loyal to certain brands. Studies show Gen X consumers often stick with products they trusted in adolescence or early adulthood, even when alternatives are cheaper. They may resign from a corporation without hesitation, but they'll drive across town for a coffee shop that remembers their order. The psychology is clear. Institutions failed them. Personal trust did not, at least not in the same systemic way. Corporations feel abstract and unpredictable. Familiar brands and small businesses feel relational. If this moved you, comment 9 right now. If it didn't, comment 0. Your voice matters. Take 1 second and share it. Loyalty becomes selective rather than blind. Then there's their spending pattern, which appears almost contradictory at first glance. They save aggressively and maintain emergency funds, yet they spend generously on experiences. Surveys show substantial annual spending on travel, concerts, and live events. Financial caution coexists with experiential indulgence. But the motivation is consistent. Assets can depreciate. Housing markets can collapse. Stocks can plummet. Physical possessions lose value. Experiences, however, are immune to foreclosure. A concert from the 1990s cannot be repossessed. A memory from a road trip cannot be erased by a recession. In an environment where tangible assets proved unstable, experiences became psychologically recession-proof. Their relationship with financial advisors reveals another layer. Data from wealth management firms suggests Generation X is less likely to fully outsource financial planning to traditional advisors compared to older cohorts. They often prefer self-directed research. They read extensively. They compare strategies. They double-check assumptions. It's not arrogance. It's vigilance learned from observing institutional misjudgments during economic crises. Here's a statistic that surprises many observers. Generation X carries high levels of total debt, yet their approach to debt is structured. A large mortgage with a fixed rate and clear amortization schedule feels manageable because it is predictable. Revolving credit card debt feels chaotic. The distinction lies in control. They differentiate between mapped debt and drifting debt. Growing up in the 1980s and 1990s, they witnessed expansions in consumer credit and later saw the long-term consequences during financial downturns. The lesson wasn't to avoid borrowing entirely. It was to borrow strategically. Debt should have a defined endpoint and a tangible asset attached to it. Undefined debt feels like quicksand. And then there's something seemingly old-fashioned yet intentional. Paper records. Many Gen X households maintain physical copies of important documents even while using digital banking and cloud storage. They remember system outages, lost files, corporate data failures. Redundancy equals safety. Digital convenience plus physical backup creates layered security. It's not technological illiteracy. It's historical memory. From the outside, Generation X may appear contradictory. Anxious yet stable. Skeptical yet industrious. Frugal yet generous with experiences. But when viewed through context, the pattern clarifies. They are a cohort shaped by economic whiplash. They were promised stability through loyalty, and then watched stability dissolve. So they adapt. They save because volatility is expected. They invest but diversify carefully. They work diligently yet maintain exit strategies. They spend on experiences because memories cannot be liquidated in a market crash. They are not confused about money. They are calibrated by history. That child in the bank in 1983 absorbed the lesson that hard work produces security. The adult in 2008 absorbed a second lesson. Systems can change without warning. Both lessons coexist. Generation X participates in the financial system without romanticizing it. They understand opportunity, but they also understand fragility. They don't assume the rules are permanent. They assume the rules can shift, and that awareness shapes everything. So when you look at Generation X and feel confused by the contradictions, maybe the contradiction is the point. They are not reckless. They are not overly cautious. They are not cynical for no reason. They are calibrated. Calibrated by watching stability dissolve. Calibrated by witnessing markets collapse at the exact moment they were supposed to be building momentum. Calibrated by learning that the rules of the game can change without notice. They save because they remember loss. They diversify because they remember layoffs. They spend on experiences because they learned that assets can disappear, but memories cannot be repossessed. That isn't inconsistency. That's adaptation. And in many ways, their psychology might be one of the most realistic blueprints for navigating modern economics. Not blind optimism, Not total distrust, but strategic participation. Play the game. Just don't assume it's permanent. Prepare for volatility. Build redundancy. Trust selectively. Enjoy what cannot be taken away. If you're part of this generation, maybe you've spent years feeling slightly misunderstood. Too cautious for some, too practical for others, too skeptical to be carefree. But maybe what you actually developed was resilience with receipts. You learned how to survive economic shock without collapsing into paralysis. You learned how to build quietly, without expecting applause. And if you're watching this from another generation, there's something worth paying attention to here. Because the economy isn't getting more predictable. It's getting faster, more volatile, more interconnected. The Gen X approach: save aggressively, diversify income, spend meaningfully, trust carefully, might not be outdated. It might be ahead of its time. If this breakdown helped you see generational money habits in a new light, take a moment to like this video so it reaches more people navigating the same questions. Share it with someone who grew up balancing checkbooks and now manages investments on an app. And if you enjoy deep dives into psychology, generational shifts, and the hidden patterns shaping how we live, subscribe and join the next conversation.